started. My name is Digambar Pradhan. I'm a web developer and team lead at WebExpress Nepal. Like Divya said, I've been working in the WordPress field for the past 4 years. And in my company, WebExpress Nepal, in our day-to-day activities, we do a lot of things. We're a web agency that cover a lot of things, such as custom theme development to custom plugins for our clients. And in our day-to-day activities, we get a lot of requests for the topics that I'm covering today. That is speed and security. So for my presentation today, I'm taking as speed as the active part of the website and security as the passive part. Why am I saying this? It's because you can tell if a site is slow, if a site is fast, and it's very evident from the start. So when you go to a website, you can see if it's loading, if it takes too long to load, it's a slow site, right? So, but on the counterpoint, how can you tell if a website is secure? You can't, right? You can't you have to go deep into the code. You can't just go into a browser and say that this website is secure and that website is insecure. So it's a process that runs in the background and not on the foreground. So I'll cover those both points as we go on, but first, let's talk about speed. In 2016, everything is fast. Just think about your internet speeds right now. Think how many of you have internet speeds that crosses 1 Mbps at your homes? Can I have a show of hands? So a lot of you, right? Almost 90% of this room. So take it 3 years ago, could you have 1 Mbps speed at your home? Were we not using ADSL 968 kbps or 512 kbps and complaining about speed at home? But now, we don't even wait for videos to buffer, do we? We can't wait for videos to buffer. Once we go to YouTube, start playing, it has to be continuous, it has to be smooth. So that's the thing. Users no longer have patience. So if I can get your attention to the graph here, this is a graph I've taken from Kissmetrics. It shows the correlation between page load time and page abandonment time. That means how many users leave your website without actually even visiting them. So as you can see, the page abandonment time is very low, below 2 seconds. And as you go to the 10-second mark, the page abandonment time increases to 25% or 30% and more. So that's a big problem, right? So you spend all the time, put the content, sign in your blog, sign a corporate website, contact us, or even worse, an e-commerce website where you sell and buy products. So before even completing a transaction, the users are leaving and finding other websites. So that's a big problem, and we're going to be talking about that today. So first, let's see the different aspects that affect speed. Page size, server location, number of HTTP requests, caching, and the server response time. So these 5 points, a lot of us developers know by heart. But sometimes I found that the most underachieved or overlooked portion of a website is these two, server location and server response time. So if you don't have a good server, how can everything else in your website be fast? So please think about it like that. The server is the base of your website. So if your house is built on sand, that's a very steep slope to climb. It's like you taking your patient to the doctor and saying, I've done all I can, it's all up to God now. So the server would be God. So tools to test page speed. So how do you know a website is fast? How do you know a website is slow? These are the tools that I personally use, GTmetrix, Pingdom, and PageSpeed. So you can see different metrics, and they give you different feedback about your website. On that point, I'm going to say something very controversial. Ignore PageSpeed. Why am I saying that ignore PageSpeed? It's Google's product, right? Google is a great creator of products, and it's built to give you feedback. So let's see an example, shall we? So I've taken Facebook as my example because everyone loves Facebook, and it's the great thing. Okay, so let's see its page speed. 68 out of 100 in page speed score. So what does that mean? It's a C grade, right? Not even a B or a grade, it's a C grade. So how fast is your website? Can anyone tell me? Any ideas, any guesses? How fast? Exactly my point. Very fast, right? But not exactly, we don't know exactly how fast it is. This is from GT Matrix. So take a look at the page load time, 1.2 seconds. So it's what I call actionable data. You can actually see that the page speed of your website is 1.2 seconds instead of a grade called 68% or 70% or something like that. From tools.ping, the same stats. So notice how the page speed is 1.15 seconds. So a little difference, but you can see that your page speed time is 1.15 seconds. So anything under 2 seconds is a very good page load time, and so it gets you actionable results. So that's why I'm suggesting that although you can use page speed to get insights into your site, when talking about actionable data or measuring data, you should use other tools such as GTmetrix or pingdom.com. Maybe we can have a discussion about that later. I'd like to get your thoughts as well. So let's start optimizing. I've covered the point because I believe it's a very important point to cover and very important point to drive home: good hosting. You have to start at good hosting. The other points would be CDN, minification, and caching. So content delivery network. What's a content delivery network? So many of you may have an idea about a content delivery network, but I'll be brief. So content delivery network is the process by which we put static resources of our websites like CSS, images, and JavaScript files, and we store them in a server that's closer to our end user. So that way, the time it takes to get the resources from the server has lessened, and it increases your page load time. So the other portion would be minification. So I've taken an example here of Bootstrap. So as you can see, I have both the bootstrap.js file and the bootstrap.min.js file. You can see that the bootstrap.min file is almost 50% less than the bootstrap.js file. You might just be saying it's 37 KB or 32 KB or something, but think about it, each 37 KB saves you a lot of speed. For plugins, so when you're developing a theme yourself or you're coding a theme yourself, you would probably do everything by yourself by minimizing the scripts, minimizing JS, etc. But we in the web agency business don't have that luxury all the time. So if you get a site that's already been made, that's using multiple plugins, that's using a premium theme, that hasn't done the minification, so what do? So these are the plugins that I use personally. Better WordPress Minify and Auto Optimize. What they do is, in the runtime, they generate minified CSS and JS files that you serve to your end user instead. And the last portion I'd like to cover is caching. The most popular thing we always focus on, caching, right? So what WordPress does is very easy because they've got a lot of plugins for that. They've got a lot of plugins such as WP Supercache, WP Rocket, W3 Trollcache, and a lot of others as well. What these plugins do is help you create a cache of resources or even pages themselves so they can be served faster and reduce the load on your server and increase load times. Among these plugins, although it's a premium plugin, I recommend WP Rocket because it's much easier to use than the other WP Supercache or W3 Trollcache. It has a much less configurations into it. So I hope you guys have a good idea about speed right now. So I'd like to now move on to security. There's an old adage that says prevention is always better than cure, but it seems from my experience that we tend to neglect this portion. Security is an essential part of your website environment. They make no mistake about that. So why do I call it the passive aspect of my presentation? Why? So here's the scenario we recently got into. A client of ours had a website, was browsing his website in Google, searching mywebsite.com, and the Google results started showing weird links, like links to Japanese websites, links to other websites, and even bookstores and etc. that weren't related to his website. What was happening? Well, he was affected by SEO spam. So what happened was, most probably the hacker got through with brute force attack and started spamming their web, putting SEO spam into the header files of their website, of the theme. And Google indexed those pages, and while he should have only had 1,000 indexed pages, he had about 60,000 indexed pages on Google. So this was bad because anytime people were searching for his website, they were getting to other bad websites, or Japanese websites, etc. And although we immediately began the recovery process and requested Google to remove those spam links, it took about 6 months to get those links removed. Why? Because we aren't in control of what Google indexes. Google controls what it indexes, and although we did all the right things, the reputation damage to his website could not be recovered easily. So he has to regain the trust of his users, regain that his website has been secured, and after that, the first thing always in his mind is my website secure? So whenever he asks for something to be done, he says, okay, can you add this feature and make sure it's secure as well? So the first question we should be asking is WordPress secure? So what level of vulnerabilities do we have in the WordPress core files itself? So past versions of WordPress are no longer secure. That's why they are the past versions of WordPress. Because with each new shiny update, we get patches for security, patches for many other things, as well as additional functionality. The core WordPress files right now, updated files right now themselves, are secure. There are no known vulnerabilities that hackers can exploit. But this leads to the next problem that I want to be covering. Plugin, what isn't secure? So this is an infographic I got from Security. This is from the first quarter and the hacks they had analyzed in the first quarter itself. So as you can see, 40% rev slider, 36% gravity forms, and 24% theme thumb. These were the reasons for the hacks of the websites, for the hacks of these websites that were being processed. They were the reason for the hacks in the website? Why? Because people didn't update the plugins. Both Gravity Forms and Rev Slider have been patched to neutralize the vulnerabilities, but the users like us don't update the plugins regularly, don't update the site regularly, and using those known vulnerabilities, hackers have gotten into the websites. So now the next question, have I been hacked? So how do you know that you've been hacked? So like like my story in the beginning, SEO spam. You search for your website and you see other links to other websites that aren't yours, that are spam. And the second thing is, when you search for a website again, you get a small line saying this site may be hacked by Google. That's an indication if you're a front-end user. And sometimes even when you try to log into your website with a username password, it says wrong username or wrong password. That's very bad because it's more probable that a backdoor has been installed and you've been hacked through the server. That's much more difficult to debug. So what can we do to stop or secure our websites? First things we should do is take regular backups. Why am I saying take regular backups? Because if you don't have a restore point, then how can you recover your website? Being hacked is very difficult because it's like a mosquito going through a net. So you know the mosquito is there, but you don't know how the mosquito got into your net. So that's the problem, right? So other things you can do, like, and security plugins are like the mosquito nets themselves. They do their best to find vulnerabilities that attack your website, but it's not always sure that all security measures, all vulnerabilities will be tracked. Again, so regular backups, I mean cyclical backups. I'm a firm believer in cyclical backups. So if you have a blog that you update every day, maybe take a backup once a week. But if you have a corporate website that only needs content change once every 3 months, maybe take backup once every month, like that. So the timing of a backup depends on the use of how frequently you use your website. So that comes to the next point, how to backup. So if you're a little tech savvy, you can do manual backups via phpMyAdmin, via FTP or cPanel by yourselves. Or if you're not that technically savvy, don't worry. Like most things in WordPress, we have plugins for that as well. Like Backup WordPress and BackWP Up. Those are the two favorite plugins that I regularly use. Or even plugins like WP Sync that allows you to migrate databases much more easily. So the security plugins, I've covered that a little bit in the beginning, so I'll cover it again. There are many plugins that offer many things, like WordFence, iTheme Security, and Security Scanner. So I personally prefer WordFence because it does a lot of things like live traffic tracking, and it tries to actively block known vulnerabilities from WordPress, like the ones I showed forward, ref slider, etc. And iThemes is good for changing WP prefixes of the database so that it's harder to hack and hardening websites. So it's your own preference, but I personally prefer WordFence in that list. So my last point I'd like to cover, what to do when you've been hacked, the basics of recovery. The first thing is, do not panic. Panicking is your worst enemy, because once you start panicking, you start making rash decisions and start changing things you probably shouldn't have changed. Go to the database, start changing usernames, go to your PHP files, start deleting files, and maybe you cause more damage than you actually need to, or you cause more damage than you actually, than the hacker themselves have intended to do. So the first thing is, do not panic. The second thing is, you need to identify the kind of vulnerability or kind of hack that has happened to your website. So there are different types of hacks, like backdoor hacks, SEO spam hacks, malware hacks. So you need to find out what that hack has happened into your website, and then start the recovery process from there. So finally, after this is the fastest man alive. So both speed and security is very important to the WordPress environment, and hopefully I've shed some light here today. And later on, I've provided some resources in my slides. Once we finish this, we'll be uploading it to the WordPress Nepal Facebook group or other avenues as we know. So if you have any questions right now, I'd be more than happy to answer.